Chapter 1: The New Hire. The morning sunlight slanted through the tall glass windows of Harper and Lane Consulting, glinting off the silver nameplates that lined the open office floor. Caleb Monroe walked in right on time, as always, coffee in one hand, tablet in the other. His crisp white shirt was perfectly ironed, his tie neatly in place, not a strand of his chestnut hair out of order. Everything had to be in control. That's how Caleb worked best. But the peace of his morning routine shattered the moment a voice, smooth as silk, spoke behind him. "Excuse me, you wouldn't happen to know where the marketing floor is, would you?" Caleb turned. The newcomer stood tall, his charcoal gray suit fitting just right, his orange hair slightly tousled like he'd stepped out of an ad. His name tag read, Asher Dalton, Senior Consultant. "The new Alpha." "Third floor," Caleb replied curtly, eyes flicking back to his tablet. Asher smiled, the kind of smile that could sell ideas, charm clients, and irritate the life out of Caleb all at once. "Thanks. You must be Monroe. Heard you're the best around here." "Depends on who's asking." Asher chuckled, brushing a bit of lint from his sleeve. "Then I'll find out myself." By mid-morning, the office buzzed with talk of Asher Dalton. How efficient he was, how smooth he talked, how he somehow made deadlines sound like fun. And, of course, how the company's best Omega, Caleb Monroe, got paired with him on the Henderson account. When their boss announced it, Caleb forced a polite smile. "I look forward to collaborating," he said flatly. Asher leaned closer, voice teasing. "You mean competing?" Their coworkers laughed, and Caleb rolled his eyes, gathering his files. Later that afternoon, in the small glass conference room, the two finally sat side by side, reviewing proposals. For a while, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the room. Then Asher said casually, "You're really focused when you work. It's impressive." Caleb didn't look up. "And you talk too much when you should be working." "Touché," Asher murmured, amused. But as Caleb turned a page, he caught a faint trace of Asher's scent. Warm cedar and something clean, steady. It made his heartbeat quicken for half a second before he forced himself to focus again. No distractions, especially not ones that wore tailored suits and smiled like that. When their boss checked in later, the project was already halfway done. The two of them, despite all the sparks, made a perfect team. Asher stretched after hours of typing, catching Caleb sneaking a glance before pretending to read. "What?" he asked, grinning. Caleb clicked his pen sharply. "Nothing. Just wondering how long it'll take before you mess up." Asher's grin widened. "Guess you'll have to keep watching to find out." And as they packed up that evening, Caleb told himself one thing. He really didn't like Asher Dalton. But deep down, he knew that might not stay true for long. Chapter 2: Coffee and Competitions. By week 2, the office had already split into two unofficial teams, Team Caleb and Team Asher. Started small. A friendly debate during the morning meeting about the best way to present client data. Caleb preferred structure, bullet points, precision, logic. Asher preferred storytelling, slides that painted emotion and impact. Their boss loved both. So, naturally, he said, "Why not combine your styles? Let's see who impresses the Hendersons more." And that was how an ordinary project turned into an all-out silent war. Every morning became a test of endurance. Caleb would arrive early, only to find Asher already there, 2 coffees in hand, one for himself and one accidentally labeled with Caleb's name. "You drink the same blend anyway," Asher said casually. Caleb eyed him. "Stop assuming things about me. Can't help it. You're fascinating when you're annoyed." Caleb took the cup anyway. "And you're impossible." Asher smirked. "That's what they tell me." By lunch, they were competing over who could finish their client revisions faster. By late afternoon, the competition had escalated into who could close more deals in a week. When Caleb submitted a detailed 30-page proposal, Asher turned in a 25-page one. Sleek, stylish, and delivered 10 minutes earlier. 10 minutes, Caleb muttered when he saw the timestamp. He really beat me by 10 minutes. The next day, Caleb arrived an hour early, only to find Asher sitting at his desk, sipping coffee with a grin. Morning, partner. Do you live here? Caleb groaned. Maybe. Rent's cheaper, Asher teased. Despite himself, Caleb laughed. Just once, quietly. It didn't go unnoticed. That evening, the two stayed late to polish the presentation. The office was quiet except for the low hum of computers and the soft click of keyboards. Caleb leaned forward, scrolling through the slides. The data visualization still looks messy. We should. Already fixed it, Asher said, tapping his laptop. Caleb blinked. When? While you were rewriting section 3. You're welcome. Caleb's brows furrowed. Show off. Guilty as charged. Asher leaned back, stretching. The movement pulled at the fabric of his shirt, and Caleb quickly looked away, pretending to type. The air between them thickened with something unspoken. Competition mixed with curiosity. Annoyance blended with a strange pull neither wanted to admit. Asher broke the silence first. You know, you're fun to work with. Caleb gave him a sharp look. I'm not here to be fun. Maybe not, Asher said, his voice softening. But you are. Caleb opened his mouth to reply, but his words were interrupted by the flicker of the office lights. A brief power dip that plunged them into half-darkness for a few seconds. For that moment, Asher's eyes caught the glow from Caleb's monitor. Calm, warm, focused on him. Then the lights came back, and both pretended nothing happened. When they finally packed up, Asher handed Caleb the last folder. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Caleb hesitated. Then, yeah, Asher smiled. Try not to let me win this time. Caleb shot back without missing a beat. I don't lose twice. Asher chuckled under his breath as Caleb walked ahead. We'll see, Monroe, we'll see. And for the first time, Caleb realized he didn't just want to beat Asher. He wanted to understand him. Chapter 3. The Elevator Incident. Fridays were supposed to be simple. Finish your reports. Grab lunch. Go home. But for Caleb Monroe, nothing about this Friday was simple. Mostly because Asher Dalton had decided to tag along to deliver their final project files personally. They left the office together, side by side, each carrying a stack of documents. The elevator doors slid open, and the two stepped in. The metal doors closed behind them with a soft ding. Asher leaned casually against the wall, scrolling through his phone. You know, I think the Hendersons liked you. They liked the presentation, Caleb replied, pressing the ground floor button. Same thing, Asher said with a grin. Caleb shot him a look. You really think charm fixes everything, don't you? Asher's grin only widened. It's worked so far. Caleb rolled his eyes and turned away, right as the lights flickered. Then everything went black. The elevator lurched to a stop. A sharp jolt knocked the folders from Caleb's hands, papers scattering across the floor. He stumbled back, bumping into Asher, whose hand instinctively caught his arm. Hey, you okay? Asher asked in the dim emergency light that flickered on. Caleb's heart was pounding. I'm fine. Just surprised. He bent to pick up the fallen pages, but the small space, the faint hum of the elevator, and the proximity made it hard to breathe normally. The air felt charged not just with tension, but with something else. Something deeper. Asher crouched down to help. Their hands brushed over the same sheet of paper. Caleb froze. For a moment, neither moved. Relax, Asher said quietly, voice low but steady. It's just us. Caleb swallowed hard. That's what I'm worried about. Asher blinked, surprised, then smiled gently. You don't trust me? Caleb looked away. I don't know you. Then let's fix that. Caleb didn't answer. The elevator hummed softly, and the faint glow of the emergency light cast shadows across Asher's face. Calm, composed, but his eyes held something patient. Minutes passed. Asher finally sat on the floor, leaning back against the wall. Might be a while, he said lightly. Want to sit? Standing won't make the power come back faster. After a hesitant pause, Caleb sat too, a few feet away. They sat in silence at first, the kind that filled every inch of the small space. Then Asher spoke, softer this time. You always keep your distance, don't you? Caleb tilted his head. You noticed. I notice a lot of things about you. Caleb's breath hitched. Like what? You hum when you're focused. You tap your pen when you're trying not to get mad. You avoid looking people in the eye when you're flustered. Caleb turned sharply. I don't get flustered. Asher chuckled. You're proving my point. Caleb's lips parted, ready to fire back. But he stopped, because he realized Asher wasn't teasing this time. He was just observing, genuinely, and somehow that was worse. The elevator jolted again, and the lights flickered back to full brightness. Caleb exhaled a shaky breath of relief. Finally, he muttered, gathering the papers again. Asher helped him up, brushing invisible dust off his sleeve. Guess we survived our first crisis together. Caleb gave a small, reluctant smile. Barely. When the doors opened, they stepped out side by side, pretending nothing happened, but both too aware of how their hearts had raced in sync in that tiny elevator. As they exited the building, Asher said lightly, So, still don't know me? Caleb glanced at him, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. You're getting there. Asher smiled softly. Good. I can work with that. And as Caleb walked ahead, trying to calm the flutter in his chest, he realized something he didn't want to admit. He wasn't sure if he wanted Asher to stop trying. Chapter 4: Rumors and Reactions. By Monday morning, the office was buzzing. Not with deadlines, but with whispers. Did you hear? Caleb and Asher got stuck in the elevator together for 20 minutes. 20 minutes? That's practically a lifetime. Caleb Monroe had no idea how fast rumors could spread until he walked into the office kitchen and felt every pair of eyes shift toward him. He froze mid-step, coffee mug in hand. Then someone, probably Mara from HR, smiled too sweetly and said, So, how was your little elevator adventure, Caleb? Caleb blinked. What? You and Asher, she continued. We all heard. Must have been close quarters. The laughter that followed wasn't mean, but it made Caleb's ears burn. We were just stuck. Nothing happened. Of course, that was the exact thing people said when something happened. When he returned to his desk, Asher was already there, flipping through reports as if the world wasn't busy gossiping about them. Caleb marched over, whispering sharply, Did you start this? Asher looked up, all innocent charm. Start what? The rumors, Asher. He tilted his head, smirking. Oh, those? No. But I'm not exactly stopping them either. Caleb's jaw dropped. You're enjoying this. A little, Asher admitted, lowering his voice. You make flustered look good. Caleb exhaled through his nose, gripping his pen tight. You're unbelievable. Thank you, Asher said, flashing a grin before returning to his work. By lunch, the situation only got worse. Someone had doodled Team Elevator on the break room whiteboard with a little heart between their names. Caleb stood frozen at the sight. Unbelievable, he muttered. From behind him, Asher's voice came, teasing but soft. At least they didn't draw caricatures this time. Caleb turned. This time? Oh yeah, there was one of me and the boss last month. Didn't catch on, though. Caleb glared, but Asher just leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee with infuriating calm. Relax, Monroe. It'll blow over. I don't want people thinking there's something going on. Asher raised a brow. Why not? Caleb hesitated. Because there isn't. Asher smiled faintly. If you say so. That afternoon, during a meeting, the tension between them was impossible to ignore. Every time Asher spoke, Caleb found himself hyper-aware of his voice. Smooth, confident, and way too close when he leaned in to show him something on the laptop. When their fingers brushed over the same trackpad, Caleb flinched, pulling back so fast that his pen rolled off the table. Asher caught it mid-air, smirking. Still nervous. I'm fine, Caleb said through gritted teeth. But Asher's eyes softened, and for a fleeting second, his teasing tone melted into something genuine. Hey, don't let them get to you. Rumors fade. Just keep being you. Caleb blinked. Why do you care? Asher smiled, that quiet kind of smile that carried more weight than words. Because I like seeing you unbothered. You're different then. Before Caleb could respond, their boss walked in, breaking the moment. Later, when the office emptied and only their screens glowed in the dark, Caleb glanced up from his desk. Asher was still there, typing quietly across the room. The glow from his monitor reflected off his orange hair. His sleeves rolled up, revealing his wristwatch and the faintest glimpse of veins on his forearm. Caleb looked away quickly, shaking his head. "You're losing focus," he muttered to himself. But when Asher caught his gaze a moment later and gave him a small, knowing smile, Caleb knew focus was the last thing he had left. Chapter 5: The Business Trip. The annual Harper and Lane Marketing Conference was supposed to be routine, presentations, client dinners, and way too much small talk. At least, that's what Caleb Monroe told himself while packing his neatly folded shirts into a suitcase. Everything labeled, pressed, and zipped with precision. He liked order. He liked plans. But no plan in the world could have prepared him for what the front desk clerk said at check-in. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," the clerk explained with a polite smile. "But there's been a booking error. All single rooms are taken. You'll have to share the suite." Caleb blinked. "Share? With who?" "Asher Dalton," the clerk said, typing quickly. "Your colleague." Caleb froze. His brain short-circuited for a full 3 seconds before he managed, "There must be another room." Asher appeared behind him at that exact moment, rolling his suitcase with a grin. "Guess we're roommates, Monroe." Caleb shot him a glare. "This is not funny." "Didn't say it was," Asher replied, voice calm but eyes glinting with amusement. "Come on, it'll be fine. I don't snore." Caleb sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This is going to be a disaster." The suite turned out to be too nice. A large window overlooked the city skyline, and the warm golden lights reflected off polished furniture. And worse, there was only one king-sized bed. Caleb stopped in the doorway. "You've got to be kidding me." Asher looked at the bed, then at him. "Relax. I'll take the couch." Caleb crossed his arms. "Good." Asher chuckled softly. "You really think I'd make you uncomfortable?" Caleb paused. His instinct said no, but his heartbeat said otherwise. The first evening went as smoothly as it could. They attended the first day of meetings, presented their pitch flawlessly, and somehow managed to avoid killing each other. By midnight, Caleb sat on the couch reviewing tomorrow's slides, while Asher emerged from the shower in a loose gray shirt and sweatpants. His hair was damp, a few strands falling over his forehead. Caleb tried not to look, and failed spectacularly. "You're still working?" Asher asked, dropping onto the bed with a sigh. "Someone has to make sure our data's clean," Caleb said without glancing up. "You should rest." "I'm fine." "Caleb," Asher said, tone lower this time. "You've been fine all week. Take a break." The sound of his name, his first name, made Caleb freeze. He looked up, eyes meeting Asher's in the soft glow of the bedside lamp. For a long moment, neither spoke. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the soft rustle of papers. Asher's voice dropped to a murmur. "You don't always have to prove yourself, you know?" Caleb frowned lightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're already good. Better than good. You just don't let anyone see it because you're too busy pretending not to care." Caleb stared at him because somehow that simple observation felt like Asher had just read straight through him. "I'm not pretending," Caleb said softly. "Then show me." The silence that followed stretched thin and delicate between them, fragile but magnetic. Caleb looked away first. "Good night, Asher." Asher smiled faintly, turning off the lamp. "Night, Caleb." Hours later, Caleb lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He could hear Asher's slow, steady breathing from the bed across the room. It should have been comforting. Instead, it was maddening. He sighed, rolling over, whispering to himself, "This is fine. Just two coworkers. Two coworkers sharing a room." But deep down, he already knew it wasn't that simple anymore. Chapter 6. Lines begin to blur. Back at the office, things felt different. Not drastically. No one would notice if they weren't looking closely. But Caleb felt it every time he walked past Asher's desk. Every time their eyes met in a meeting. Every time Asher's voice softened just a little when he said his name. The hotel trip had left something unspoken hanging between them. Something they were both pretending not to see. Monday morning started like any other. Caleb was pouring his usual cup of coffee when Asher appeared beside him, reaching for the sugar. Their hands brushed, just barely. But Caleb still felt it like static. "Morning," Asher said with that easy smile. "Morning," Caleb echoed, trying to sound casual. "You didn't text me back last night," Asher added, stirring his coffee. Caleb blinked. "It wasn't work-related." "Didn't say it was." Caleb gave him a look, half warning, half embarrassment. "I was busy." Asher leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You're always busy, Monroe." And then he walked away, leaving Caleb staring after him with a heartbeat that refused to calm down. That afternoon, the marketing team had a client crisis. A file mix-up, a looming deadline, and a very stressed-out Caleb trying to fix everything before their boss noticed. Asher walked in mid-chaos, coat slung over his arm, completely calm. "What happened?" Caleb didn't even look up. "Client reports missing pages. I have to redo everything." "Then I'll help." "I don't need help." "Too bad," Asher said simply, pulling up a chair beside him. "I'm not letting you drown alone." Caleb shot him a sharp look. "You don't have to." Caleb, his name again low, steady, grounding, to shut down every argument in Caleb's throat. They worked side by side for hours, their usual banter replaced by quiet teamwork. Occasionally, their elbows brushed. Once, when Caleb leaned over to check the screen, Asher's scent, warm and faintly spiced, made him lose his train of thought. "Something wrong?" Asher asked softly, eyes flicking toward him. Caleb shook his head quickly. "No, nothing." But his voice betrayed him. By 9 p.m., the office was empty except for them. The city lights outside shimmered against the tall windows, bathing the room in gold and blue. Asher stretched, rubbing his neck. "Finally done." Caleb smiled tiredly. "Yeah, we did good." Asher leaned back in his chair, eyes on him. "You ever notice how we always end up staying late together?" Caleb chuckled softly. "Because you're slow." "Or maybe," Asher said, voice soft, "I just like working when you're around." The words hung there, quiet, dangerous. Caleb's breath caught. "Asher." Asher held up his hands, smiling gently. "Relax. Just saying." But Caleb couldn't relax. Not when his chest felt too full, and his head too loud with things he couldn't name. As they packed up, Asher reached out, stopping Caleb by the doorway. "Hey," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "Don't overwork yourself so much. You're allowed to rest." Caleb hesitated, searching his eyes. There it was again, that quiet sincerity that made it impossible to stay annoyed. He nodded. "I'll try." "Good," Asher said, stepping aside to let him pass. As Caleb walked toward the elevator, he didn't see Asher watching him leave, the faint smile tugging at his lips, the one that said he wasn't sure where this connection was heading, but he wanted to find out. And Caleb? He pressed the elevator button and caught his own reflection in the chrome. His cheeks were still faintly flushed. Something was changing, and he wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. Chapter 7. The Alpha's Vulnerability. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, emails, and silent glances. Caleb tried to ignore how often Asher crossed his mind. The warmth of his laugh, the way his sleeves rolled up just enough to show the veins on his forearms, the quiet concern in his voice that night. He told himself it was just curiosity. But curiosity shouldn't make his chest tighten every time Asher looked at him. That Thursday evening, the entire team was forced to stay late again. An urgent presentation for a client overseas. By 10 p.m., most had gone home, exhausted. Only Caleb and Asher remained, reviewing the final slides in the dimly lit conference room. Caleb was focused, eyes glued to the screen. "We're missing one chart from the projections." Asher interrupted quietly. "Caleb, stop for a second." Caleb looked up, startled. "What?" Asher leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. For the first time he looked tired. Not the usual confident, untouchable Asher Dalton that everyone admired, but just a man, exhausted, shoulders heavy. "I'm fine," Caleb said automatically, though he wasn't sure why. "I wasn't talking about you," Asher replied with a small chuckle. Then, softer, "I'm just tired of pretending I've got everything under control." That caught Caleb off guard. "You? Pretend?" Asher gave a half-smile, eyes downcast. "I'm an alpha, remember? We're supposed to have all the answers. Be calm, strong, in control." Caleb tilted his head. "And what if you're not? Then people stop believing in you," Asher said quietly. "Or worse, they pity you." The honesty in his voice startled Caleb. For a moment, all he could do was stare at him, the man everyone admired suddenly stripped of his usual armor. Caleb leaned back slightly. "You know, you don't have to keep that act up around me." Asher looked at him, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Why not?" "Because I already know you're human." That earned him a real smile, small, but genuine. "Dangerous words, Monroe," Asher said, voice softer now. "Maybe," Caleb replied, "but they're true." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was heavy, thoughtful, the kind that made both of them aware of just how close they were sitting. When the presentation was finally saved and uploaded, they packed their things in quiet harmony. Caleb slung his bag over his shoulder, glancing at Asher still seated at the table. "You coming?" "In a minute," Asher said, gazing out the window at the dark skyline. "Just need a breather." Caleb hesitated, then set his bag down again and sat beside him. They didn't talk for a while. The hum of the city below filled the silence. Faint horns, a distant siren, the soft whir of the office AC. Then, without looking at him, Asher said, "You ever feel like you're chasing something you're not supposed to want?" Caleb froze. "What do you mean?" Asher turned to him, eyes searching. "Something that feels right but wrong at the same time." Caleb's throat went dry. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken meaning. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Asher let out a soft laugh. "Forget I said that." But Caleb couldn't, because in Asher's tone, there was something real, something raw. When they finally stood to leave, Asher walked him to the elevator. "Caleb," he said as the doors slid open. Caleb turned, heart pounding. "Thanks for staying." Caleb smiled faintly. "You do the same for me." Asher's gaze lingered. A little too long, a little too intense. "Yeah," he murmured. "I would." The elevator door closed between them, but the weight of that look stayed with Caleb all the way home. That night, lying awake in his apartment, Caleb couldn't shake the image of Asher. His tired smile, the softness in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, the alpha wasn't as untouchable as he thought. And that thought was far more dangerous than he was ready to admit. Chapter 8. The Scent That Gave It Away. The week after the presentation, the office atmosphere shifted. No one else noticed, but Caleb did. Asher had grown quieter around him, less teasing, more careful. And yet, whenever Caleb caught his scent lingering near his desk, clean, calm, and faintly spiced, his pulse betrayed him. He tried to focus on his reports, but every tap of Asher's pen, every brush of his sleeve when they passed each other in the hall, sent a ripple through him that he couldn't explain away anymore. It was Friday. The office buzzed with the usual pre-weekend energy. Most of the team was preparing for a company event that evening, an open-floor mixer to celebrate a successful quarter. Caleb wasn't in the mood to socialize, but as the assistant project manager, attendance was required. Asher, of course, would be there too. Caleb sighed, adjusting his tie in the mirror near the elevator. "Just a few hours," he muttered. "Smile, talk, escape. Talking to yourself again?" Caleb spun around. Asher stood there, sleeves rolled, jacket slung over one shoulder, smirking. Caleb rolled his eyes. "You startled me." "Sorry," Asher said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. "You look good, by the way." Caleb blinked. "It's just a tie." "Still," Asher said softly. It suits you. The event started in the main lounge. Soft music, laughter, the smell of food and champagne. Caleb kept mostly to the edge of the crowd, nursing a drink and avoiding too much conversation. But Asher found him anyway. Not really a party person, huh? He asked, appearing beside him. Not when I could be finishing tomorrow's report, Caleb said dryly. Asher chuckled. You're hopeless. They talked quietly for a while, about work, about the new project launch, about nothing at all. But underneath the small talk, there was something else. Something thick and restless in the air. When one of the interns spilled a drink nearby, Asher instinctively stepped forward, his hand landing lightly on Caleb's lower back to guide him away from the mess. It should have been nothing, but that touch, firm, protective, too close, sent a shiver through Caleb's entire body. And that's when it happened. Asher froze. Caleb did too, because for a moment, brief but undeniable, Asher's scent spiked in the air between them. Warm, deep, alpha. It was subtle but unmistakable. Asher's eyes widened. Sorry, he said quickly, pulling his hand back. Didn't mean to. It's fine, Caleb said too fast. But it wasn't. The scent clung to the space between them, stirring something instinctual in Caleb that made his breath come uneven. It wasn't supposed to affect him like this. He was used to alphas, used to composure. But Asher was different. He wasn't overbearing. He wasn't trying to dominate the space. He was trying not to. That restraint, that quiet control was what made Caleb's heart race. A few minutes later, Caleb excused himself, heading for the hallway to breathe. The air felt thick, too warm. He leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady his heartbeat. Footsteps followed, steady, familiar. Caleb. Asher's voice came softly. Caleb turned. I just needed a break. Asher nodded slowly. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable back there. You didn't, Caleb said a little too quickly again. It's fine. Asher hesitated, then took a step closer. Are you sure? Because if I ever cross a line. You didn't. Caleb's voice broke slightly. It's just confusing. Asher studied him for a long, quiet moment. Yeah, he murmured. It's confusing for me too. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The tension that had been building for weeks finally hovered on the edge of something dangerous and tender. But Asher stepped back first. We should go before people start wondering. Caleb nodded, though his pulse still hadn't calmed. Yeah. As they walked back into the light of the party, both of them knew something had changed tonight, and there was no going back to how things were before. Chapter 9. What the Heart Can't Hide. Monday mornings were supposed to feel ordinary. But after the company mixer, nothing about Caleb's mornings felt normal anymore. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The warmth of Asher's hand, the scent that lingered just long enough to leave his thoughts spinning. He'd lain awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when his heartbeat had started matching Asher Dalton's voice. When Caleb walked into the office, Asher was already there. Standing by the window, sunlight cutting through the blinds and casting gold lines across his face. He looked calm, unreadable as always. But when he turned and saw Caleb, his expression softened. Morning. Caleb nodded, setting his bag down. Morning. There was a pause, not awkward but heavy. The kind that happens when two people know they're pretending not to remember something that changed everything. Later that afternoon, their boss sent them to the 27th floor to review a client file in one of the small meeting rooms. It was quiet up there. No chatter, no phones, just the hum of the air conditioning and the echo of their footsteps on marble floors. Caleb settled in at the table, flipping open the folder. We just need to finalize these numbers and… Caleb, Asher interrupted, his tone different. Caleb looked up. What? Asher closed the door behind him. We need to talk. Something in his voice made Caleb's pulse skip. Asher walked closer, careful, composed. But there was tension in the way his jaw moved, in the way his eyes searched Caleb's face. About the other night, he said quietly. Caleb exhaled. There's nothing to talk about. It was Not nothing. Asher's voice wasn't raised, but it was firm, certain. Caleb swallowed. You're my coworker. We work together every day. We can't. I know, Asher said, cutting him off. Trust me. I know all the reasons we shouldn't. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that Caleb could see the faint tired lines beneath his eyes. But every time I tell myself to let it go, it just gets harder. Caleb's chest tightened. Asher, you make it hard to stay composed, Asher admitted, voice low but steady. And I've been trying to pretend it's not there, that maybe I imagined it. Caleb looked away, his throat dry. You didn't imagine it. The silence that followed was electric. Caleb felt it, the pull between them strong and terrifying. His mind screamed for logic, for boundaries, but his heart had already chosen a side. Asher, he whispered, this can't. I'm not asking for anything, Asher said, softer now. I just needed you to know. Caleb finally looked up, meeting his eyes. Why tell me now? Asher smiled faintly, almost sad. Because hiding it doesn't make it go away. Something broke in the air between them, fragile restraint shattering into quiet truth. Caleb took a slow breath, standing. You're impossible. Asher's lips twitched. So I've been told. Then, before Caleb could think, before logic could return, Asher reached out. Not to pull, not to claim, just to touch. His fingers brushed Caleb's wrist, light, hesitant, asking permission. Caleb didn't pull away, and that was all it took. The air grew still. The soft hum of the room faded until it was just them. Two people who had spent months walking the fine line between duty and desire. Asher's thumb brushed against his pulse, and Caleb finally whispered, We shouldn't. I know, Asher said again, but I can't keep pretending. Their eyes met, and suddenly, all the walls between them felt paper thin. When the door opened minutes later, just a coworker looking for a stapler, they sprang apart like nothing had happened. Caleb muttered something about finishing reports, heart racing. Asher only nodded, expression unreadable again. But when Caleb left the room, he caught a glimpse of Asher's reflection in the glass wall. Eyes closed, hand pressed against his chest. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was something deeper, something real, and it was only getting harder to hide. Chapter 10. When the lights go out. Friday night. The building was nearly empty. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of the cleaning crew 2 floors down. Caleb was still at his desk, eyes fixed on the spreadsheet in front of him but not really seeing it. His mind had been looping the same thought all week. What happens now? After that moment in the meeting room, things between him and Asher had been complicated. They still worked together, spoke the same way, polite, professional, but something was different. Every word they said carried a weight neither dared to name. And the worst part? Caleb missed him. Not just Asher the coworker, but Asher, the person who made late nights feel lighter, who smiled like the world wasn't so serious after all. The office lights flickered suddenly, pulling him out of his thoughts. Caleb frowned, glancing up, and then the entire floor went dark. He stood, startled. Oh great, power outage. A few seconds later, a voice came from down the hall. Caleb? You still here? Asher. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness as Asher appeared, a faint glow from his phone lighting his face. You okay? Yeah, Caleb said, relieved. Just startled. Asher chuckled softly. Figures. The one night we both stay late. They moved toward the windows where the city lights still glowed faintly, painting everything in soft silver and blue. The storm outside rumbled low, lightning flashing somewhere beyond the skyline. Asher sat on the edge of the desk beside him. Guess we're stuck here till power's back. Caleb crossed his arms, trying to hide the way his pulse jumped. Could be worse. Asher smiled. Could it? Their eyes met in the dim light, quiet, unguarded. And suddenly, the silence between them didn't feel so heavy anymore. Asher, Caleb started, voice low, about everything that's happened. You don't have to say anything. Asher cut in gently. I meant what I said. I wasn't trying to make things complicated. But they are complicated, Caleb said, his tone softer now. Because I can't stop thinking about it either. That froze Asher in place. His flashlight beam trembled slightly in his hand. You can't. Caleb shook his head. I've been trying to ignore it, to tell myself it's just stress or the hours we spend together. But every time you look at me, he exhaled shakily. I forget how to think. The admission hung in the dark, raw and quiet. Asher's jaw tightened. He set his phone down on the desk, the light now illuminating both of them in a faint glow. Say that again, he said softly. Caleb swallowed. You heard me. I want to hear it again, Asher whispered. Their eyes locked, and suddenly, everything they'd been running from finally caught up. Asher reached forward, slowly, carefully, the way you'd touch something fragile. His hand brushed Caleb's cheek. Caleb didn't pull away. The city lights reflected in his eyes as he murmured, You have no idea how hard it's been to pretend. Caleb's breath hitched. Then stop pretending. And in that moment, no power, no noise, just two hearts pounding in sync. Asher leaned in. Their foreheads touched first. Just that simple, grounding, real. Then, finally, softly, the world narrowed to the space between them. The lights flickered back on just as they broke apart, breathless and silent. Caleb blinked against the sudden brightness, cheeks flushed. Asher chuckled under his breath, voice still low. Figures. Right on cue. Caleb shook his head, smiling despite himself. Of course. They stood there, unsure of what came next. But somehow it didn't feel frightening anymore. Asher slipped his hands into his pockets. So, where do we go from here? Caleb thought for a moment. Maybe we stop pretending to be just co-workers. Asher's smile deepened, slow and genuine. I could live with that. As they left the building together, the rain had stopped. The city lights glistened off the pavement, reflections dancing like small pieces of silver. Caleb glanced up at Asher walking beside him. Steady, calm, a quiet warmth in his eyes. And for the first time in months, the world felt right. Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe it would get messy. But under those office lights, between deadlines and quiet nights, something real had started. And neither of them planned on letting it fade.